on the right side and the wrong things on the wrong side.
Cosine equals 87 divided by 105, the square root of 105.
I mean, I can't always be their little girl.
And then I got pregnant, and I never spoke to my family. I never, they're not the type of family, It's not the Brady Bunch, you could say.
Adolescence is a time of stressful change for teenagers. Growing maturity brings on more responsibilities, higher expectations, increased social pressures.
I'm sick of doing things for other people. I used to always be there for my friends and always be happy and everything, but they never were to me anymore. So right now, I don't care anymore what they want or anything because they hurt me really bad.
For about 20% of teenagers, the challenges seem overwhelming, and their response can be antisocial and self-destructive. Some never fully recover. Others, with the help of caring adults, weather the storm of adolescence and get on with their lives.
My dreams right now are to hopefully finish high school, raise my own family, and do the kind of job that I'm into right now, which is working with kids, trying to keep them off gangs and drugs, stop them from doing the things that I did.
Stress affects every teenager. Its sources and impact are as varied as teenagers themselves.
Your dad came home and caught you throwing a party. He would ground you, beat you, strangle you.
The more stressors a young person has in his or her life, the tougher life seems, and the poorer their psychological well-being.
Competition gets better. There may have been a time when a person was the best athlete in grade school or the best science student and so on. But when you step in a large high school with 2,000 students, there's always somebody who's better at something. They're a better scientist, a better track person, better looking. And so if your self-esteem was based on being number one, you're going to have a lot of self-doubts.
If you add on to the normative stresses of adolescence, including pubertal changes, dramatic changes in peer relations, including dating, the inevitable struggles to individuate from family members. If you add onto that any other kinds of life stressors, poverty, a parent losing his or her job, divorce in the family, an alcohol problem in one of the parents, these will exacerbate the already stressful situation of many adolescents.
Divorce is a stressful event during adolescence because it tells young people that the future is uncertain. Here they are at a time in their own life when they are trying to plan their future, make decisions that will have major consequences on their lives, and they are seeing their parents who made major decisions can't keep it together. So it doesn't do anything to help young people feel certain about the future. It knocks the props out from under them.
My stepdad, he acts like a 3-year-old, and I don't like him, and my mom and him are getting in fights, and then I get in fights with him, and then he gets mad at my mom, and I hate when my mom or my dad, they go out or they marry somebody that I don't like.
The main ways in which children from divorced families differ from those in non-divorced is in acting out defiant and involved in antisocial behaviors. This is more characteristic of boys than of girls. You also get higher rates of school dropouts in your boys. Now, girls, when they become adolescents, start to look more like the boys. So their rates of acting out defiant, conduct disordered behavior goes up. These kids are more likely to be involved in drugs and in alcohol use and in sexual activities.
We find for girls that growing up in a high-conflict home or in a father-absence home may stimulate earlier and faster pubertal development. As girls from father-absent homes, on average, go through menarche or have their first period about 4 months earlier than girls in father-present homes. Now, 4 months doesn't sound like a lot, but in something like human puberty, which is very constrained, it really is a fairly large effect.
While some teenagers suffer from family conflict, Others experience stresses uniquely cultural.
Under the best of conditions, adolescence is a really difficult period, but it's also a very exciting period. But for boys of color, if you will, this period is even more difficult than really for girls, or certainly for white boys and white girls, because very often we've not thought about black boys as black boys. And I call them black boys quite specifically because I think they deserve a childhood, as opposed to adultifying them. Very often as they walk down the street, they watch people grab their purses more closely to their chests or move closer to, say, the sidewalk. But there are lots of symbolic behaviors which occur in the other as people approach or come in contact with African-American male youths. And one has to stop and ask the question, what impact does that have on the evolving sense of self for young African-American adolescents?
All teenagers face challenges presented by their unique circumstances. Most get through adolescence without too much difficulty. Some call this resilience under stress hardiness.
Hardiness is three things. It's coping with problems decisively so that they can be solved. It's having an outlook about yourself and your world that supports the hard work of that coping process. And it's being able to count on social supports to assist and encourage you in that same difficult coping process.
Teenagers who lack one or more of these supports often descend into hopelessness.
Instead of having a sense of commitment, you have a sense of alienation. You believe that the world isn't worth getting involved with. It's not going to work out, so you hang back. You don't get involved. Instead of a sense of control, you have a sense of being a victim, a sense of powerlessness. No point in trying, they'll get you every time, you can't fight City Hall. Well, you try to escape and avoid in whatever way you can. And for adolescents, that often means drugs, or alcohol, or something like that, or watching TV every waking moment so you don't have to think about anything else, or all of these things that shrink your life to a postage stamp. So whereas the others are learning and developing and going further, you're trying to hold on to some, in some vain way, you're trying to hold on to some stability and security because you can't deal with any changes. Things go from bad to worse because you miss the whole developmental phase of adolescence.
Adult support can be crucial to teenagers who have difficulty facing challenges.
Would you want communication with the parent? Yeah, that would be the type of...
The best mentors for adolescents continuing to develop toward hardiness is people who really believe in you and can say, you can do it, we know you can do it, things are hard right now, but that's fine, just keep working the way you're working and everything will turn out fine, we know, we trust you.
Trust can also mean not intervening when a teen is in trouble.
People learn by their own experiences, including their own failures. And if the child is aiming toward a failure, the adolescent is aiming toward a failure, then there's a limit to which the parent or the teacher should protect against that. The failure may have to happen, but what's needed is for the parent or the teacher to be there and be supportive all the while.
I want to try and make myself throw up, but I can't, and I know it's really bad, and I'm glad I can't, but, you want to.
The stresses of adolescence often lead away from normal development and into self-destructive behaviors. Among them, eating disorders such as anorexia, excessive dieting, and bulimia, gross overeating followed by self-induced purging.
For both anorexia nervosa and bulimia, the usual occurrence is between the age of 12 and 32, with the majority of first appearance cases occurring between about 12 and 18 or 19 years of age. So adolescence is the key vulnerable time, and especially among women.
Kim Crawford suffered from anorexia in her youth. Now a therapist, she runs a support group for teens with eating disorders.
I'm sick of doing things for other people. I used to always be there for my friends and always be happy and everything, but they never were to me anymore. So right now, like, I don't care anymore what they want or anything because they hurt me really bad.
Just because I don't feel like eating doesn't mean that I'm, sick or anything right now. And I don't feel that anyone has any right to tell you, oh, why aren't you eating today? Or here's something to eat. Makes me mad.
I hated where I was, that I was even thinking of killing myself because it was so bad that I wanted to get out of there, that I couldn't handle it any longer.
There are several reasons I see why an adolescent may choose an eating disorder as a coping tool. First of all, if they're suffering from low self-esteem, they may have received messages from mom, dad, peers that their value is solely related to their body weight, and therefore they become very powerful with their behavior in terms of food as a way of feeling good about themselves, a false sense of feeling good about themselves. Secondly, with the control issue, with an adolescent, they're not a child anymore and they're not an adult. They're in a real difficult transitory period, and they may feel like they have no say in their life. So the control issue comes up with the one thing that they can control is what goes in their mouth, and they become very powerful with that.
It makes me feel kind of better than other people when I know I have control over something, but then it makes me mad because they just like eat pizza or whatever they want, and if I do, I feel bad, but they just go on and eat whatever else they want.
I see a lot of teenagers who have gotten into rigidity with perfectionism. They want to be the perfect student, the perfect friend, the perfect daughter, the perfect athlete. And perfectionism is obviously an ideal, not something anyone can truly reach, so they're dealing with the want to be perfect and the inevitability that they can't be.
Well, I don't really have like a problem like anorexia or anything like that, but my mom just gets worried about my eating because like I'll go on, just sometimes I won't eat at all.
With the teenage population, what I see most in my office is usually a concerned parent or friend brings them into the office. So in dealing with a teenager, I'm usually dealing with someone who comes into the office not of their own free will. They will come in, they'll be in complete denial, they don't have a problem, they can be 25 pounds underweight and say, there's nothing going on, I'm on a diet, I wish my mom would get off my back.
I was real defensive and I said, I don't have a problem, Mom, this is a place for psychos and people with mental problems, and I announced it to the whole hospital. I walked in and I said, this is a mental ward. I don't belong here. And everyone's kind of looked at me. And I thought, and the guy took me in a room, one of the doctors, and he went through this whole, it was like a chart, and there's about 25 things on it, the different stages and the progression of, the anorexia and bulimia, and at the end was cardiac arrest, and I was about 2 things away from that. I guess I knew I was anorexic, but I didn't believe it.
And very often when a teenager gets involved in the downward spiral of an eating disorder, that is restricting food and then distorting their appetite and constricting their food selection, beginning to lose weight, this then increases anxiety and horror on the part of their parents, so the parents try to exert more control. This goes against adolescent feelings on the part of the teenager.
I think I did it for attention because in my freshman year, all my friends were all like, well, why don't you eat? What'd you eat today? And I'm like, what do you care? That's the only time that they care is when I'm in front of them. And my mom's all like, she'll say, let's go eat this or let's go eat that. I don't want to eat anything, and it bugs me. I'm sick of her telling me what to eat. And she's getting better, but she doesn't ask me as much anymore.
One thing I hear from that is that you want the caring from these people. You want the caring from your family and friends. You just wish it didn't have to come through an eating disorder to receive that.
Mm-hmm.
So many of these people are suffering with family issues, and if you treat just the individual, they go back into the home, and the home is still maintaining itself prior to the eating disorder, then the person's going to be more apt to go back to the behavior. In all of the situations, the emotional growth has to take place to be able to let go of it.
But I remember I still got scared. Remember with mono and stuff? I was still scared about getting fat. I still am now. Mm-hmm. It's not, I don't know if it'll ever go away from me. You don't know what else to turn to, and I don't want to, load everyone else with my problems because they've already been down that road with me again, Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Christy, what about you? Is there a turning point?
for you in sight?
Not yet. The only thing that I'm worried about is when I grow up, I love kids, so I want to be able to have kids, but that's the only real, it's the only cure or reason to become cured so far that I can think of.
I don't know why, I don't know how it happened, but, I woke up one morning and decided to do it and tell my dad. And all of it came out at the same time. It all came out that, you should eat right and you can do it, Julie. There's nothing wrong with changing.
In the U.S., births to unwed mothers surged from 4% in 1950 to nearly 25% in 1990. Most of these unwed mothers were teenagers.
One night I was watching TV and all of a sudden I threw up for no reason. So my mom took me to the doctor and the doctor came in and told me I was pregnant and I couldn't believe it. Even after I seen the ultrasound, I couldn't believe it. And as the doctor told me, I just cried. I was like, no, not me.
It's hard to raise two kids when you don't go find a job. It's sometimes hard. If you don't finish your school, it's going to be a lot hard for some mothers. So I would like to finish my school.
There are several negative impacts of adolescent pregnancy. Firstly, she's very likely to not complete high school. About 55% of teenage mothers never complete high school. And this is not a short-term impact, but it has long-term implications. Teenage mothers have educational deficits as long as 17 years post-high school. As a consequence of her limited education, she's also placed in a job with low earnings, a job that's very low prestige and low skill, low paid. And again, that's not a short-term disadvantage, but rather teenage mothers have lower incomes 11 years after high school. Thirdly, she's also very likely to become pregnant again. Fourthly, she's very likely to become dependent on welfare, particularly when her children are young, for example, between ages 3 and 5. Teenage mothers don't prefer to be on welfare, but because of their limited job earnings, don't have a choice about that.
Who taught you about sex?
Nobody.
Did you read in books or talk to your friends or did you talk to your mom or learn at school?
Just by myself, I think.
My parents gave us those little birds and bee talks when we were little, but those don't tell you much.
First time I heard about sex was from my older sister. We were looking through my mom's drawers and we found the Joyous Sex book.
So the baby begins to come down the canal. And the widest part of the baby is what? Who knows what the widest part is? The shoulders, okay? So the shoulders are coming down. As the shoulders come down, the baby rotates.
Comprehensive sex and pregnancy information reaches only a small percentage of adolescents.
They're not learning from their parents. The girls report that they don't talk about sex or contraception or dating with their mothers, and that they're scared and intimidated about those kinds of conversations. They typically learn from friends, I would say friends and family, and also, unfortunately, through the media as well, just vaguely in terms of romantic relationships and what those are like.
Does anybody have a friend or a relative or a sister who's pregnant?
I have a friend, but I don't want to mention her name.
Okay, can you just talk about it without mentioning her name?
Yeah, she was pressured into doing sex and she didn't want to, so he said, if you don't have sex with me, I ain't gonna, be with you anymore. So she did, and she ended up pregnant.
While not much is known about teenage fathers, the profile of pregnant teenage girls continues to emerge.
Girls with low self-esteem are more likely to initiate sexually during their adolescent years. Girls with pessimistic future orientation, they don't see much of a future for themselves. They're also likely to become sexually active and pregnant during the teenage years.
Nobody told me to be a mom. I learned by myself.
Often in the midst of poverty or uncertain futures, the route to adulthood or adulthood status via more traditional routes, such as through educational or career achievements or through parenthood after marriage, they're really not accessible. But rather what teens choose to do is to achieve adulthood and adult status in their community and their family by having sex or by getting pregnant and by having children.
Yet for most teens, pregnancy is a jarring end to childhood.
My friends at first was, they're excited, oh, you're going to have a baby. and everything, and you know, everybody was real nice to me and everything, and people who I didn't even know were coming up to me and talking to me and telling me, oh, that's so good, baby's gonna be so cute and everything. But after a while, people start treating you different, and they start forgetting to call you when there's a party, and they start forgetting to call you when everybody goes out, and it's really, sometimes it's really hard being left out of things.
Society today demands that teenagers stay in school. However, special circumstances and stresses cause many to drop out.
I just couldn't handle normal schools. The way it made me feel like I was in a hamster cage, the way it kind of molested my brain because it's so rigid.
High school was never for everybody. We started out serving very small fractions of our kids in high school. 7% finished school in 1900. And it went up to about 75% in 1970, and it stayed right about there.
I felt like I was in a place where everybody was babysat, you know, it wasn't learning or anything, and I just wanted to get my education and start working.
Self-contained high schools, bringing everybody there for 6 hours a day, teaching them largely the same curriculum, and hoping that they'll all hang in there for 12 years. Just doesn't work. And you're always going to lose some kids as long as you think of schooling as the basic model that we've got.
For those who do drop out, the costs can be high.
Lower lifetime income expected, higher incidence of involvement with costly public services of one sort or another, more dependency on welfare, more dependency on public health services, more involvement in crime. 2/3 of the population of the nation's prisons are people who have not finished high school.
I got involved in gangs in the 3rd grade, and I grew up in Compton, so it was like that was the only lifestyle I knew. So when I got to school, it was like, you know, what's it for, you know? I used to go and just clown around, you know, get into gang fights, and eventually the school eventually kicked me out.
And I got pregnant, and I never spoke to my family. I never, you know, they're not the type of family, you know. It's not the Brady Bunch, you could say. And I never went back to school because I was on the run, you know. How was I going to go to school if I was a runaway?
How old are you?
17. So
How old is your baby?
1 year old. And so
John Hall is one educator who recognizes the need to deal with teens as individuals. A former high school teacher, he runs an alternative educational program for kids who have dropped out.
Are you making your credits up?
Yeah, right now this is my senior year, and then I'm getting enrolled in a community college right now.
That's fantastic. What do you want to do? What's the dream?
I want to be a lawyer.
A lawyer. That's great. That's great.
The last year that I left Hollywood High School, a kid was 17 times tardy to my first period class. The teacher had been driven crazy by this kid, you know, who just wandered in a half an hour late, arrogant, you know. And you can see this kid is crying out, you know. I mean, everybody was miserable in this situation. And I sat down in my office with this kid and asked him, you know, what are you dreaming about? And he said, nothing. I asked him, well, when did you stop dreaming? And I began to ask him, well, did you dream at all when you were 17? Well, when you were 16. And I began to back him down, and finally he said, this guy isn't going to go anywhere. And he finally started thinking about it, and he said, and I got to 14, he said, yeah, I was dreaming. I said, well, what were you dreaming about? And he said, I was dreaming about being a veterinarian. And I said, how are your grades in school? He said, all A's and B's. So, you know, I began to realize through those kinds of situations and others that kids have to have, adolescents, teenagers, have to have a dream. It pulls them into the future.
The whole transition from child to adult in that in-between stage is profound. They're definitely sort of off in a world of changes, physically, emotionally, that they need to deal with. The best schools recognize that, the best educators recognize that, and find ways to channel it and work with it and accommodate it.
my dream is to be an airplane mechanic. I want to be an airplane mechanic because they make a lot of money. That's why.
I want to become a basketball player. I mean, basically, I just go to school, right after school, go to the park, practice basketball, go to work.
My dreams right now are to hopefully finish high school, raise my own family, and do the kind of job that I'm into right now, which is working with kids, trying to keep them off gangs and drugs, stop them from doing the things that I did.
I want to be rich. Rich. Disgustingly rich. That's why I'm going to school. Because I want to, I want everything in life. I want everything, I want the best. Everything you could possibly think of, I want it.
In spite of the problems, in spite of the difficulties, family problems, pregnancies, these kids all want to achieve. They all want to have a dream. They want to believe that they can have one and love the support and caring that it takes to nurture that dream.
You're from Carthage. Yeah. I like a guy that sits in my chair.
There aren't enough adults who care in the lives of many children. Who cares about where I'm going as a teenager? And if somebody cares, maybe I'll care a little more about where I'm going myself. How can we have more of that in this society? It means more parent involvement, more adult involvement in schools one way or another. It means more connecting to kids.
My mom and my grandmother and grandfather were encouraging me to, work hard. Because they kept telling me I could do it, And I've done it so far.
Adolescence can be a difficult time to grow. Under stress, teenagers sometimes seek solutions that get them off the track and into trouble. Yet, with the aid of caring adults, teens can overcome challenges and move ever closer to fulfilling their potential in the world of adults.